Monsters University is not a good movie. I'm not the first person to say this, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't be said. It's not a new take either, because the movie came out over 7 years ago. But like a monster lurking in my childhood closet, it has haunted me all of this time. Because I didn't like it when I saw it, and the best way I found of expressing that feeling was through this very eloquent statement. Movie bad. But I think we can do better than that, much like Pixar could have done better. Part of why this movie was so hated was because everyone loved Monsters, Inc., and we all begged for a sequel, but instead we got an origin story. There's also the fact that the plot itself is as unimaginative as they come, and is basically like any other college movie, but with scaly bait. I mean, it works, but that's not all a movie needs. But I'm here to say that the real reason why this movie is bad is because it has the exact opposite lesson of its predecessor, and I'm gonna explain why. Let's beat this abomination together as I want to talk about Monsters University. In order to understand the problems of the present, we must first look into the past. By that I mean the first movie. Even though I guess that movie is the present and the new movie would be the past because it's a sequel. In order to understand the problems of the new movie, we must first look into the original movie. Once upon a time, there was Monsters, Inc., and it was great and it made you cry, don't lie about it. It had great characters, an interesting premise, and the cutest kid ever animated. As the title implies, this is a movie about monsters, and it's really fun to see how their world works, as well as how it relates to our universe. But, as the title also says, this is a movie about corporations. Mike and Sully, our protagonists, work at the energy company that powers the entire city. This energy is harnessed through the screams of children, so their job is to scare a bunch of kids and collect their terrified shrieks of horror in the name of their own civilization. It's the sort of atrocity they don't really stop to think about, because they are too engaged with this society to see its flaws. In fact, they both seem to be on a path to success, with Mike having a steady girlfriend and Sully being on good terms with his boss. If they keep things up, their lives could only improve. Except one day, they run into a human child. This is bad, because if humans find out about this world, their entire society would be compromised. It is also a safety hazard, because monsters are raised to believe kids are toxic. The more they get to know this child, however, the more they realize that she's actually kinda cute and not harmful at all. This kid was brought into the monster world as part of a plot to get even more energy out of children. Monster Society is actually going through a bit of a power crisis as kids become harder to scare. So the plan is to turn to even more gruesome methods of extracting energy from them, even possibly killing them. This is seen as a necessary measure, and it was orchestrated by the head of the company. According to corporate owners, harming children is a necessary sacrifice because it keeps the economy afloat. Oh crap, it's getting too real again. The characters are now faced with a choice. They either leave the system as is, prioritizing their normal lives, fully aware that society can only function through the exploitation of children, or they expose the whole operation, shutting down the factory, causing a massive job and energy crisis, but making sure that no kids are harmed again. Mike and Sully choose the latter option, tanking the economy but saving the children. The conclusion presented to us is that a system built on harming others is not only unsustainable, but also terrible from a moral standpoint. And supporting that system makes you just as bad.
There is no ethical consumption under capitalism, pass it on.
You can't stand by a corrupt system without becoming corrupt yourself. Lucky for us, the movie has a happy ending. The monsters figure out that laughter is a much better source of energy than screams, so they change their model to making kids laugh instead of scarring them for life. You could make the argument that they're still exploiting the kids by using their laughter without compensating them for it, but I don't know. Providing them with jokes seems like a much more wholesome alternative than giving them childhood trauma. Also, I'm too busy crying over how cute the final scene is. To put it simply, this finale comes after the realization that your success is morally worthless if it can only be achieved through the cost of someone else's life and safety, and the only way to succeed in an unethical system is to partake in the very movements that make it unjust. The protagonists conclude that personal gain isn't worth it if it depends on someone else's downfall, and they create a new system that doesn't harm anyone. Stuff like the energy crisis, child kidnapping, and traumatizing kids were never an inherent part of the system. Instead, they were signs that the system was flawed. So, the characters changed it, and everyone lived happily ever after. And then came this godforsaken prequel. In Monsters University, we go back in time to the origin story of a character that really didn't need one, but was given one anyway, so now we gotta deal with it. Mike Wazowski is a kid who didn't fit in anywhere and was struggling to find a place where he truly belonged. The answer comes to him when he visits the scare floor of Monsters, Inc., and decides he wants to become a professional scarer. Mike is a guy who plays by the rules. As a child, he learns that the best way to get a job as a scarer is by going to college, so he does what he is told he has to do. He studies hard, he gets good grades, and he is accepted into Monsters University. Unfortunately for him, all of that hard work is undermined by the fact that, by monster standards, he isn't considered scary. In this universe, being scary is a bit like a gift. You either have it or you don't. And society says Mike doesn't. I mean, I wouldn't be too happy finding that thing inside my closet at night, but who am I to disagree? Because of his inherently unscary nature, Mike is told he will never make it as a scarer. Still, he doesn't let himself be knocked down by that assumption, and works twice as hard to learn all of the rules of frightening. He understands the theory behind all grimaces, growls, and roars. He can answer any question his professors throw at him, and he knows the perfect way of scaring any child. Despite being told he would never succeed, he manages to become the best student in his class. The dean kinda has it out for him, though, so she kicks him out of the program under that same pretense. She claims he is not scary, and is therefore unable to graduate, even if he was doing a pretty good job at mastering scaring techniques. Mike is being rejected by a system that has failed him, because it has given him no chance of pursuing his dreams. Despite having been betrayed by the system, he does not abandon it, and attempts to get back into the program by striking a deal with the dean. If his team wins the latest edition of college games, they will be admitted into scaring classes once more. This is a step no other student had to go through in order to graduate, and it was pretty much created on the spot, but it's still seen as an official rule, and Mike believes he can succeed if he follows it. So far, we have been presented with a system that is arbitrary and unfair, and a character that prefers to follow its rules instead of questioning them, even if they were deliberately designed to sabotage the chances of people like him making it to the top. It is a system that has promised success through hard work, but if that's really all it took, then Mike would be succeeding by now, and he is not. This system is flawed. Now, because this is a prequel, most of its viewers had probably watched Monsters, Inc. already, and they know what we're supposed to do with flawed systems. We change them. Except Mike isn't interested in changing the system. He is still very much determined to follow it. He has a bit of trouble at first, but he soon learns to take advantage of the unique abilities of his ragtag team of misfits, and they slowly start to win. But it's not enough, because society itself dictated that they were never meant to win. The game is rigged. The only way to win is by cheating, which they do. Both win and cheat. Mike is allowed back into the program, but he's still not happy. He wants a clean victory, something that can finally show him that he belongs. He wants to prove that he is conventionally scary. Except Mike is scary, or at least, he's perfectly capable of scaring others. When his plan backfires and he finds himself trapped in the human world with Sully, Mike is the one who orchestrates a plan to cause absolute terror, generating enough screams to power a door back to monster reality, which is something that had never been done before. His vast knowledge on scaring techniques is what allows him to succeed, proving once and for all that he can, in fact, cause as much panic as he wants. And he's still expelled. As he's leaving Monsters University, the dean drops by to congratulate him on his feat, basically saying that she's proud of what he has achieved. But she doesn't do anything else to help him. She doesn't let him back into the program, she doesn't give him a recommendation letter, she doesn't get him a job or an internship or any sort of opportunity to thrive in that system. She just lets him go. Mike, who has tried his best, who had to work harder than any other student, and who achieved things no one else had ever done before, is still denied a chance to actually succeed. Mike is stuck in a system that does not allow him to win. This is a flawed system. But instead of questioning why the society wants him to fail so badly, Mike sees every setback as a personal flaw. It all happened because he was supposedly born without an arbitrary characteristic that he could easily overcome with the help of other tools. And he sees it as it being his fault, instead of an injustice. And even after the dean rejects him, he continues to try and play by the system's rules, joining Monsters Inc. with Sully as part of their male division and working their way to the top like a good capitalist. Oh, and by the way, he apparently got into the scare team because of open tryouts, which require neither a college degree nor company experience. He literally had to use a different route than the one that was sold to him as the correct one. So you have a movie that is constantly pushing the characters towards the realization that their system is unjust, since it does not respect the needs of its entire population and explicitly pushes out those who are deemed undesirable. And the whole time you're watching this movie just waiting for someone, anyone, to question any of that. But they never do. Mike's shortcomings are still treated as something he has to keep trying to overcome, as if they can be somehow beaten by hard work and dedication, even if we've seen that same strategy fail about 5 different times now. When he wins, this is framed like some sort of personal victory. They want you to think this is a happy ending. Monsters University is a movie that teaches you should never question the system, even when it seems unfair, unjust, or exploitative, and that your own path to success should be your priority over the needs of the many. You just have to keep playing by the rules until you get there. Which is the exact opposite of the moral of Monsters Inc. There is a sad irony to this. The only reason why Monsters University got made was because fans begged the studio for a sequel, some sort of continuation of the great themes and emotional questions from the original film, something that could expand our knowledge of the monster universe and take us to where the characters would go next, maybe even tackling how humans come into play. Instead, we get a movie based on a time before the events of the original film, following a rather cliché narrative, barely expending the world building aside from this very specific college setting that isn't even all that different from its real-world equivalent, eliminating all possible emotional connections to humans, and teaching us a rather backwards reading of whatever principles the original movie was trying to support. Making Monsters University a prequel is what doomed the film, but it didn't have to be. Sure, you have to end things in a way that doesn't conflict with the status quo of the start of Monsters Inc., but the writing team could have sprinkled some foreshadowing on the themes and stories to come. They could have suggested that the characters were unsatisfied with the way things were, or they could have focused more on the benefits of prioritizing community over personal success. You could call it boring for being the same lesson as the first movie, but at least it wouldn't be the opposite. But no matter how much we speculate on what could have been, it's hard to ignore what we actually got. The lazy way out. If you write a prequel, you don't have to worry about exploring any of the deeper moral themes of the original movie. That would be complicated, and it would take actual effort. It's much easier to make up an origin story that you know how it's going to end, because all it does is remind you of how much you love the protagonists of Monsters, Inc. You don't love the rude, uncaring, selfish jock version of Sully. You love the version of Sully that learns to cherish a human child. You don't care about the lonely, nerdy, socially awkward Mike. You care for the funny Mike who learns to trust his friend. You might put up with a prequel to see how they end up like their older selves, but you already know which version of them you prefer. And once you watch Monsters University and remember how much you love Monsters, Inc., you might as well watch Monsters, Inc. again. Maybe even get the Blu-ray version to replace that old VHS of yours. You might even consider buying some merch. It doesn't matter for which movie, the character designs are practically the same anyway. Monsters University is a cash grab prequel that betrays the message of the original and didn't even have enough heart to make the journey worth it. The fact that it was a prequel instead of a sequel sends the message that the studio prioritizes profit over effort, and shows us that the real monsters truly are the corporations themselves. Thank you for watching. Well, hello there. It was very nice of you to watch this video. If you have enjoyed the video, you can do those cool things such as clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the notification bell too. You can also follow me on Twitter and share this video with your friends. If you really like what I do, you should consider supporting me on Patreon. I have linked it down in the description and I highly recommend you check it out. Feel free to leave a comment down below, especially if it is about how much you love Monsters, Inc. or even Monsters University. You're free to like whatever you do. I want to give a special thanks to all the new subscribers I got over the past weeks. Welcome to the channel. It is very nice to have you, and I hope you stick around. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye!
When I was on the bus, I found a nickel! I wish I had pockets.